Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us to have completed Surah Al-Baqarah, because there are many people that don't have the opportunity to understand all these weighty ahkam and all these things. Inshallah, it's been a pleasure to have had the opportunity to have shared this time with each of you. And I hope that it enriches your life. And that starting next week, we start from Ali Imran. Now things will start to move much quicker now, because the main groundwork has already been laid with Surah Al-Baqarah. And many times Imam Al-Jawzi rahimahullah will say, please refer back to what we had previously said in this regard. Please refer back to it, because most of the groundwork has been laid. Now we are looking at narratives. We come to Surah An-Nisa, which is the governance of what the woman should read with what her rights are. Surah Al-Ma'idah, what the man should read to understand what his rights are. And they trade to understand each other's rights. This was a common practice in the early generations. You have people getting married, and I don't know why, how they're doing it, but they're getting married as if it's like a sitcom. They say, well, we get married and we get linked in, and if I don't like him, or he's not the one for me, or I don't get the butterflies and all these other things, I get rid of him. It's not like that at all. Marriage is bigger than that. Marriage isn't just about you, because the greatest witness in marriage is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have the khatib, you have the witnesses, you have all these people. Marriage isn't what we do because it's just what we do. I'm finished with college now, I gotta get married. It's not like that. It's bigger than that. So think about this very carefully. But you've completed Surah Al-Baqarah. I know it's a big haul, but if you get a chance to it's 65 pages. I know that. 65 pages. But if you get a chance to just read through 10 pages of it a day, just to review your knowledge of what you've gone through, your notes. Then when we come to Surah Ali Imran, your mind will be fresh and attuned with all the information that you've built. Is there a question over anything we've covered so far? No? Yes.
Regarding student loans,
yes.
And the finance company, regarding tuition for research, can you explain regarding riba?
The question is with regard to student loans, paying them back in finance companies, whether or not this represents riba or not. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. There are many different types of loans and grants and transactions. So to give a general statement about all of them would not be possible, because they're so varied. If I was brought the paperwork on a particular one that you're referring to, then I could look at that and definitely be sure of what it is and what it isn't. But to give a blanket statement, like some loans, the Stafford and Perkins loan, that's fine. Some loans aren't. Some loans are. Some grants, some are just grants. Some are allocated from other places. It totally depends on the type of transaction. The main thing I want you to keep in mind is this. When you enter into a transaction with anyone, and the transaction assumes that you have a debt, or you're supposed to have procured a debt from a transaction, you have to ask the question, is any service being rendered to me? Am I rendering a service? No. Are any goods being levied to me, or am I levying any goods? No. Then that means what's being mentioned in this particular transaction is riba. That's basically what it is. Or this person is trying to take advantage of me. That's the reality. Now, what's the difference between that, because the question will then come, well, what's the difference between that and I buy a truck for $3,000 and I sell it for $5,000? Isn't that riba? Because it's going up. It's like, no, you've bought the truck, haven't you? Yes, I bought the truck for $3,000, I'm selling it for $5,000. And you're selling it to this person for $5,000. Yes. Where's the riba in that? Has there been a service, a purchase? Yes, you've purchased it. And you're selling it to him for $5,000. Yes. For goods levied? Yes. What are the goods? The truck. For a service rendered? Yes. What is the service? That he'll be able to drive that truck. So nothing's happened in that transaction. There's been no change. The only change is that you bought it for this price and now you're selling it for this one. That's been the only change. There's been work in that transaction. There's been an occurrence within that transaction. Someone says, well, yes, but there's been an increase between this one and this one. Yes, absolutely. Now that is what you call your profit. Now there's a difference between urud, profit, and riba. Urud are profits that come either from a sale or from a service that's been rendered. So when you receive a truck for £5,000, or you buy a truck for £5,000, then you sell it for £5,000. What's the profit you've made on it? Nothing. You've made nothing. You just bought it and then sold it for exactly what you had on it. If you buy the truck for $5,000, then you make modifications, you have it painted, you do all these other things, then you sell it for $6,000. Have services been done on this truck? Of course. You've repainted it, you've modified it, you've done modifications, now you've sold it. Or if you've bought the truck from London, where there are quite a few of them, and where you're from, the generality of the people understand that this truck would be $7,000 and you sell it for $7,000. No, because that has to do with the transactions in the area of what people understand. So for some people, apples will be such and such for so many in a bunch. And in one area, it will be so many based upon popularity, the price of that, the services rendered, shipping costs. Because the cost it takes to get that apple from here or to get that truck from where you are to there, you have to pay for that. And so if that goes into the charges, now the transportation, is that a service rendered? Yes, that's a service being rendered to you. You have to pay for that. Okay, that now goes into the transaction. Goods levied for the truck being given. Yes, they've got to pay for that. So that goes into that, just like your energy bill. If you don't pay it and they send representatives or they send bailiffs to the property to recover their bill, and they say, now there's 230 pounds charges here. What are these 230 pound charges? Well, these are the court fees, because British Gas had to go to court to get a right of entry warrant to come into your property to service their meter and to disconnect their supply. So now your supply, you owe 400 pounds, but you also owe 200 pounds in the court costs and 30 pounds for the cost of the locksmith. Is that riba? No. No. Those are services rendered and goods levied that had to be done because you wouldn't pay your electricity bill. So don't be like the Muslim brothers that I sometimes talk to and say, Akhi, I don't pay interest. It's because you don't pay your electricity bill either. It's nothing to do with interest. So it's an important point to know the difference between riba and profit. Right? Is there a final question? Or do we close? Yes.
I have a friend that does some kind of goods kind of work where material is involved, and sometimes he needs to get the money off the customer before he gets the material, because he ends up the money for the material himself.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets the money for the job, but sometimes he can't get the exact same material that was required for the job, and he has to spend a bit more on it. So therefore the cost of the job changes to what was agreed upon before. Can you explain that?
Okay. The question is regarding where there will be a prepayment service where someone will have to take a material, and sometimes a particular material may not be available for the transaction that the person wants to do. So they're buying ahead. And then sometimes that material isn't available. So then they have to buy either a more expensive material, and that gets passed on to the customer.
So they get paid for the service.
That's it. They get paid for the service, yes.
Or you say they're taking money for the material, but
yes,
they're having to spend more on the material.
They have to spend more. Okay. Alhamdulillah. In that case, they would still, as long as there's an agreement between them and the customer that this is what the case is, then there's no problem. If there isn't that agreement and that understanding, they need to state so. The same thing as if you sell a car to someone, sold as is. You have to say that and make sure to say this car is sold as is. So they understand that if the muffler falls off, if this happens, it was sold as is. I don't know all of what's been done because let's say it hasn't had an MOT in 4 months. I don't know. But I'm selling you this car as you see it, I'm selling it to you. You have to be as honest as you can in your transactions. If you tell someone, listen, I want this particular blue Chevrolet van. Well, we don't have that color in stock, but we have another one in stock, but it's green. But it's smaller than the other one. And you don't have any pictures on your website. Oh, you don't have any pictures of it. I'll bring it down to yours. You can look at it. It's sold as is. You have to be as honest with people as you can, because it will come back on you in transactions. That's the most I can say. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم أستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين لا إله إلا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك إنه غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين السلام عليكم بسم الله